The U.S. Special Envoy Tim Lenderking urges parties of the conflict to uphold to the United Nations brokered truce. The joint forces take unilateral initiative and open the main road of Hais al-Jarrahi to ease the movement of people. Rights group report says that Yemeni women have been trapped by the 8-year war, especially in Houthi-run areas. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fuad. U.S. envoy for Yemen said Yemeni parties must adhere to the UN truce. He added that UN terms attempt to turn the truce into a comprehensive ceasefire and an inclusive peace process in Yemen. This came during a conversation with the Gulf States Institution, and it included opening roads to Taiz and offering flights from Sana'a airport. Despite the UN and U.S. Special Envoy's repeated calls on the conflict parties to uphold to the truce, Houthi militia continues to violate it on different fronts. The following report has more details on this.
The 2-month truce in Yemen isn't only the most significant step towards ending the conflict in years, but could be an important factor in de-escalating tension in the region. The Arab coalition led by Saudi Arabia, the internationally recognized government of Yemen, and Iran-backed Houthi militia have all agreed to the United Nations-backed truce. According to the United Nations Special Envoy to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, the parties accepted to hold all offensive military, air, ground, and maritime operations inside Yemen and across its borders. They also agreed for fuel ships to enter into Hodeidah ports and commercial flights to operate in and out of Sana'a airport to predetermined destination in the region. They further agreed to open routes in Taiz and other governorates in Yemen. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged for the agreement to start a better future for the Yemeni people, following more than 7 years of war that began when the Houthi militia backed by Iran occupied major cities, including the capital. The government called on Saudi Arabia and other Arab states to support its efforts to liberate those cities and restore security and stability. Thousands of Yemenis have been killed in the war, which led to unprecedented humanitarian crisis that starved millions of people. The truce agreement thus is a critical moment in the conflict. Houthi militia, however, have broken earlier ones. But if the international community can secure an implementation of the militia and its Iranian sponsor, the truce can very well lead to a lasting ceasefire, an end to the conflict, and a political process to restore Yemen's stability and territorial unity. An end to the conflict in Yemen will also lead to a significant de-escalation of tensions in the region, stoked mostly by Iran's foreign policy through interference in the internal affairs of its Arab neighbors and financing and arming proxy militias such as Houthis, Hezbollah, and Iraqi militant groups.
The European Union delegation welcomed the Yemeni Parliament adoption to general budget for 2022. The EU considered this an important step in line with the recent developments in the economic field. The mission stressed that the European Union encourages the efforts of the Presidential Leadership Council and the Yemeni government. Mayun organization welcomed the Joint Forces announcement to open Hais al-Jarrahi line. This came as a unilateral measure in implementation of the armistice declared by the United Nations. Mayun praised the courageous initiative of the Joint Forces and the measures taken on the ground to open this vital line. President Rashad Al-Alimi and members of the Council have arrived today in United Arab Emirates. This came after the UAE welcoming to the new Presidential Leadership Council after its appointment. Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation affirmed the UAE's full support for the PLC to carry out its duties. A Houthi mine explosion caused a serious injury for a woman in Taiz Governorate. Local residents said that a woman in her 50s was exposed to this explosion in Makbana district west of Taiz. The sources stated that the victim had her leg amputated and she sustained burns and shrapnel in different parts of her body. Local rights group report has revealed that women in Yemen have undergone terrible human rights violations from all warring parties. Yet such abuses reach the highest rates in Houthi-controlled areas. The following report has more details on this.
A recent report by a Yemeni-based NGO revealed shocking numbers regarding the scale of abuses women in Yemen have faced since the beginning of the war. SAM Organization for Rights and Liberties said in its report issued on International Women's Day that more than 4,000 cases of abuses against women were recorded until the end of 2020, including murder, injury to the body, arrest, forced disappearance, torture, and prevention of movement. The report also indicated that there are more than 900,000 displaced women in the camps of Ma'rib Governorate as a result of the ongoing war in the country. The Houthi movement has the highest rate of abuses against women with 70% of the cases, followed by Yemen government forces with 18%, the Southern Transitional Council with 5%, and other parties with 7%. The violations varied between deliberate killings and severe injuries against female civilians and activist acts that are considered war crimes and crimes against humanity, according to the report. Former Yemen Minister of Human Rights Hurriya Mashhour said that the war is a calamity for all people, affecting both men and women, but its impact on women is more severe. The war affects young women and men as well, but the latter have to drop out of school to go to the battlefields. Also, women face health problems, especially mothers, in light of the deterioration of health services and displacement that many families are exposed to. Huda al-Sururi, head of Aden-based Defense Foundation for Rights and Freedom, said, "Over the past few years of the war, women have faced gradual systematic practices to strip them of their rights amid the absence of laws, the disruption of state institutions, and the malicious control of most areas across the country, especially groups affiliated with the Houthis. The de facto authorities have committed crimes and violations against women that have never occurred in the history of Yemeni conflicts, stripping women of their rights and committing transgressions with purely ideological movements." As she said, many women have been sacked from their jobs and were not allowed to take up jobs in certain professions. This is not to mention restrictions of their rights, freedoms, and prohibition of travel except with a male companion. In a report issued in December 2020, the Yemeni Network for Rights and Freedoms documented 4,282 cases of abuse against women in Yemen from 2014 till 2020. Another activist added, women were also marginalized in the government formation in 2020, with only one woman being part of the negotiations. Many women are also arrested and tortured, with no regard to social morals. Many female activists and journalists are being threatened and arrested. They are not immune to abuses and killings in the most horrific ways, torture, or booby-trapped, as was the case of the journalist Rasha, in reference to Rasha al-Harazi, who was killed in a car explosion in Aden.
Armed Houthi militia attacked a doctor in a neighborhood in the capital Sana'a. Local sources said 4 armed militants attacked the doctor after he was subjected to several attacks earlier. The source noted that the Houthis had detained the doctor and his brother earlier in Yemen. Despite soaring prices and hard living conditions, local community initiatives have played a major role in easing the suffering of civilians. In Aden, a local initiative was started to provide Eid clothing for displaced and needy people in the city. The following report has more details on this.
In light of the greed of clothing merchants, a number of humanitarian initiatives were launched to provide Eid clothing for displaced and poor families in Aden. Despite the noticeable improvement that has occurred recently in the exchange of the Yemeni rial against foreign currencies, the greed of merchants and those keen on exploiting people's misfortune is still present in Aden. This was evident in markets and clothing stores, which are witnessing a huge increase in their prices, especially with the approach of Eid al-Fitr. Many impoverished, displaced, and needy families are unable to purchase Eid outfits for their children, which prompted youth relief initiatives to spring.
Our campaign runs under the slogan, "Your joy matters to us," and it's supported by the charitable Immigration Association for Development. It's the first time we've ever worked with them, and we thank them for their trust in our initiative. With their support, we've managed to distribute 3 Eid outfits to 50 families, which means 150 outfits in total.
Under the slogan "Your joy matters to us," the campaign set out to hand out Eid clothing to nearly 50 families with limited income from all directorates of the governorate, among whom are displaced, needy, and destitute. This campaign is supported by the Charitable Immigration Association for Development.
برعاية كريمة من مؤسسة الهجرة الخيرية تنفذ وتدشن مبادرة عندي أمل اليوم.
The I Have Hope initiative aims to provide clothing for displaced, needy, and poor families in destitute regions in light of the blessed Eid al-Fitr. This initiative aims to expand its relief activities, especially during this holy month and the days leading up to Eid.
The initiative's beneficiaries expressed their gratitude to those in charge of the project.
أشكر مبادرة عندي أمل على الذي دعمت نحن في به.
I thank the I Have Hope initiative for their aid as our circumstances were dire and we were unable to purchase Eid clothes. Their assistance has been greatly appreciated and they've greatly relieved us of the shopping anxiety we felt. This initiative has greatly lifted our burdens. We hope many more follow in its trail.
The rise in humanitarian projects as Ramadan ends and Eid dawns represents a positive gesture to deepen social solidarity, through which the suffering of these families is alleviated and hope and joy are restored to their lives again.
Coming next. Amid totally collapsing healthcare services, cancer patients in Taz Governorate struggle to seek medication. Welcome back. Why the international community keeps calling the Houthi militia to hand over the maps of minefields that they have planted in every inch in Yemen. The rebels seem to take all these calls for granted. Innocent civilians are killed daily due to such deadly mines. The following report has more details on this.
In light of the International Mines Awareness Day as its memorial comes on the 4th of April, Yemen is facing invisible threat in which landmines are expected to disrupt lifelong after the war ends. Since 2005, the General Assembly declared 4th of April as International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action. It further called for continued efforts by states, with the assistance of the United Nations and relevant organizations, to foster the establishment and development of national mine action capacities in countries where mines and explosive remnants of war constitute a serious threat to the safety, health, and lives of the civilian population, and the recession of social and economic development at the national and local levels. Yemen is among the world's most mine-contaminated countries, joining countries such as Afghanistan, Angola, Somalia, and Cambodia, where the devices have maimed civilians for decades, strewn across the land in the course of long bloody conflicts. Due to the devastation of landmines, Parents forbid their children to play in areas littered with unexploded devices. As long after the war that has already spanned 8 years is over, children will still be in danger of losing a limb or even their lives, while playing with or stepping on a remnant of the continuing conflict. Since the Houthi militia takeover of Sana'a in 2014, the rebel group has extremely used landmines, which have a massive impact on children. A UN report in 2019 showed that a quarter of all deaths from these weapons were children. Landmines, unexploded ordnance, aircraft bombs, missiles, or rockets killed more children in the first 5 months of that year than they did in all of 2018. According to the report, landmines have been responsible for the most child casualties, with a mortality rate of 40%, in which 1 in 5 children to have been injured have died. Improvised explosive devices have caused the fewest child casualties, however, 67% of which have died from their injuries. Landmines have also left at least 3 western coast water facilities inaccessible, according to 2 aid groups. In addition, mines have made it more difficult for villagers to feed themselves and maintain their income, as Yemeni citizens said that they had been injured and many people had been killed when landmines detonated in farmlands or grazing lands. Many displaced people said mines prevented safe harvesting and killed valuable livestock. Landmines have further prevented humanitarian organizations from reaching communities in need along the western coast, as Human Rights Watch stated. These included villages and towns in Tahita and Moza districts, as well as the major port city of Hodeida. 3 aid groups said they couldn't reach key places or provide services to areas because landmines were planted there or along the route. Landmines kill, injure, and leave people with disabilities in the war-torn Yemen. Until now, nothing can prevent these inhumane crimes from happening and devastating people's futures.
The ongoing conflict in Yemen has damaged major infrastructure of health facilities. This has been reflected on poor or almost non-existent proper medical care. This reality gets tougher with those suffering from dangerous and chronic diseases. The Fang report tracks the struggle of cancer patients in Taiz while seeking medication.
Cancer patients in Taiz live in a painful reality amid the high incidence of cancer and the limited availability of Al Amal Center for the treatment of cancer in providing medical services, since the center is the only institutional shelter for patients. 3 years ago, Ahmad Muhammad was diagnosed with brain cancer, and the journey of painful torment began in the search for treatment between clinics and cancer centers.
I hope I recover and be healthy again.
3 years ago, with its dark days and nights, opened the doors of suffering and a great shock for his family, as they depend on a pension, which is the only weapon which it faces the battle of life and the battle of brain cancer. Ahmad Muhammad's older brother, Wissam, did not surrender to the challenge.
Our only hope is that Ahmad recovers. We pray to Allah and for people to help him. This is our only wish in life, and we are quite worried about his health condition.
Oncologist Hisham Abdelaziz considers that the patient's case, Ahmad Muhammad, is included in the palliative treatment due to the lack of any possibilities for surgical intervention in Yemen, especially for patients with brain cancer.
The patient was diagnosed in 2019 with brain cancer. He started his treatment in 2019, and then this year his medical condition worsened. But having a surgery would be very risky as the equipment needed are not available in Yemen and the patient needs to travel abroad to get proper medical care.
Despite the scarcity of capabilities and the high number of cancer patients, Al Amal Center for Cancer in Taiz strives to provide free medical services to patients.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. The U.S. Pasha envoy Tim Lenderking urges parties of the conflict to uphold the United Nations brokered truce. The joint forces take unilateral initiative and open the main road of Hais al-Jarrahi to ease the movement of people. Rights Group report says that Yemeni women have been trapped by the 8-year war, especially in Houthi-run areas. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.